Hello there, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates. I have a difficult topic to cover. It's going to be a long video, I suspect, and it's organizational narcissistic abuse. It's when organizations abuse you. Many times, what we're associated with is a parent or a spouse or a loved one who has these qualities of being borderline or histrionic or narcissistic or antisocial. And we all have those stories to tell. But when an organization abuses you, many times it's more hurtful, and people have been abused by companies, by schools, by churches, by treatment centers, by counseling centers. There are a lot of organizations, the U.S. government, other governments. So I want to focus in on abuse that was inflicted and perpetrated by organizations, because it's different than just being organized or abused by an individual. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the qualities of an abusive organization. I'm going to apply it to the movie Dead Poets Society, which is such a brilliant example of a narcissistically abusive organization, the school. I'm going to share from personal experience about how I was abused by a treatment center. What's the next thing I'm going to do? I'm going to talk about how I also had an experience with a healthy treatment center OnSite near Nashville, Tennessee, where they were the opposite of a dysfunctional and abusive organization. So let me share 8 qualities of an abusive organization. Number 1, they have wrong paradigms. Nazi Germany thought their paradigm was our race is better than anybody else's, and we need to keep our bloodlines pure, and let's kill Jewish people and black people, and that's what their paradigm was. There are so many paradigms that are just not true and based in some narcissist's hatred. Any cult will be a place where their paradigm is just crazy. So their paradigm is off. Number 2, there is no feedback system. They don't hear you. They don't listen. They're incapable of taking in critiquing. When I get negative comments on YouTube, if they're respectful, I really appreciate them, and I don't mind them at all, and I leave them up. If they're shared disrespectfully, I take them down, and I frankly don't take them as seriously. But I want feedback, and that can help me be better. But in unhealthy, abusive relationships, there is no feedback. Number 3, they shame you. Number 4, they're controlling. Number 5, they're cult-like. Number 6, they crush people's spirits. They make people feel powerless, and they drive them to the point of suicide. Number 7, the organization seeks out and builds up an army of flying monkeys. And number 8, they always will scapegoat the innocent person. So, in Dead Poets Society, they had a wrong paradigm at the school. The paradigm was kids should do what they're told. The important thing is that the parents' agenda is affirmed. There's no real need for creativity. There's no real need for individuality. It's all about power and social acceptance and what the parents want. Wrong paradigm. Number two, there was no listening. The head of that school and the professors, they didn't listen. The only one that listened was Robin Williams' character, John Keating. The third thing is they were horribly shameful. In the movie they actually used the board and whipped them. But more than that, they just shamed and shamed and shamed until you conformed. The next one is they were very controlling, and they were looking to create a mindless herd of students who did what they were told and then moved on and did what they were told some more. That really was cult-like. And they crushed the spirit of this beautiful young man who, in his heart, wanted to be an actor. And his greatest triumph, his greatest moment in life, where he was the star of a play and his talent was flourishing and he had great joy, that night ended in suicide because the paradigm, the organization, if you include the parent in the school organization because they were in cahoots together, they crushed this boy's spirit, and he said, fine, if I have to give up my soul, I'm going to give up on life. The next one is they enlist flying monkeys. Yeah, toward the end, when they were arranging for Keating to be out, then they made all the students sign a piece of paper that said, he's a bad guy. And some of the less loyal ones to Keating, really jumped on board and became flying monkeys. And then they escaped. The one guy who really loved the boys, the one guy who was really bringing life-changing value, he was a hero. And they turned him into the problem, the scapegoat, and somebody who gets fired. That's what a destructive, narcissistically abusive organization will do to people. This next one is very personal for me, and I'm not sharing this to be vindictive. I'm sharing it because it's a great example of organizational abuse, and frankly, I want to warn people about this particular organization, but I'm mainly sharing because it's a brilliant example of how organizational abuse occurs. So the organization I'm speaking of is called the Bridge to Recovery, and it is the treatment center that my narcissist went to on May the 4th of this year, last year, 2015. So I'm going to go through these criteria for an abusive organization. Number one, they have wrong paradigms. What I'm going to share is, in my opinion, what a treatment provider, whether it be a counselor or a treatment center, what a truly authentic narcissistically abusive syndrome paradigm of somebody who knows what they're talking about, what that would look like. So in their case, the patient was the patient, and they guarded this woman's loyalty like they were her attorneys. And the truth didn't matter. The family system didn't matter. And they turned her into the victim. It's like she had been this horrible, notorious, lying, cheating, con artist, horrible sexual facts that she wrote down and admitted to. And within days, they had turned it around to she was the victim, and she was really the victim of her own love and sex addiction, and the real bad guy was me. And they never broached the concept of borderline personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder, which would be the correct diagnosis. I'm a big believer in sexual addiction treatment and having that as a diagnosis, but you know what? A lot of times the best diagnosis for somebody with a lifelong sexual addiction, lying, cheating, isn't sexual addiction, it's psychopath. I'm not saying all sex addicts are psychopaths. I'm not saying that. Most of them are just people with an addiction. Some of them, the correct diagnosis is antisocial personality disorder. This organization, they weren't capable of listening to me. They completely tuned me out. They told me that they thought she was telling the truth 100% when she arrived. And my therapist, who's worked with sex addicts for 30 years, he said, that would be the first sex addict who ever arrived to a treatment center telling 100% the truth. She's probably telling about half the truth. So eliminating the conversation between the narcissistically abused partner, it just disempowered me. And it just totally left me in the dark where I had already been left for 6.5 years. And my very worst moments of pain, a time when I was suicidal, a time when I entertained thoughts about actually homicide, not her, but the sex addict boyfriend, was a reaction to the powerlessness that came from this organization that basically what they did was they empowered a narcissist and didn't care about what was true and vilified the victim. It was just horrific. They were controlling, harsh, rude, judgmental, non-communicative with me. They empowered her. A narcissist who's lying doesn't need to be empowered. That's the last thing that they need. She was this covert narcissist who pretended to be a codependent, and she became this outgoing, scary, wicked witch with all kinds of flying monkeys as she was empowered by this treatment center. Number 5, these organizations are cult-like. And that is exactly what happened. When you show up, even at a good treatment center, they really encourage relationships between group members. And there is a little bit of love bombing that goes on. And what it resulted with for this vampire, this narcissist, was an amazing source of fresh narcissistic supply. You know, she lost me, but she gained 15 group members and 10 therapists who were family within days, who had colluded together and decided that the victim was the perpetrator and the perpetrator was the victim. And I think the people there at this bridge to recovery are good people, and I think they're well-meaning, but they didn't know how to spot a narcissist. And the problem with narcissistic abuse syndrome, when you're on fire, who acts nuts? Me. I would call their line at night and moan like a wounded animal. I wasn't trying to scare them. I was just letting them know I'm really sad. But who looked crazy? Me. You know? So they were out of their depth, and they got the diagnosis wrong, and they basically did everything they could to empower the perpetrator, and to disempower me to the point of suicide. I called Kim Iverson, the director of this organization, and told her, you guys handling the way it is, the way you've been handling it, that's the point that I became suicidal. And she said, well, that's not on me. She just didn't hear me at all. So yes, the place was full of flying monkeys, and they scapegoated somebody who, acted crazy, was on fire, was traumatized. But that's the problem with this syndrome, is you are so traumatized, you feel like you're covered in gasoline, you're on fire, you're screaming, and then the narcissist and their flying monkeys go, that's the problem. They're abusive. They're crazy. And it's sort of believable. Now, let me tell you a story about a treatment center that's healthy and not abusive. It's not perfect. There is no perfect treatment center. There is no perfect company. There is no perfect church. There is no perfect family. So I was in the treatment center there at OnSite called Milestones. And I'd been there for about a week. And the first time when I arrived, I was on fire. I was like, fuck this and fuck that, and dropping words I don't normally drop, and filled with rage, playing it out in these little drama groups. And there were people who were not only traumatized, but there were some really hardcore borderlines there. And they identified me as enemy number one. So one day we're in group, and I was taking notes. I was being discreet because I know it was frowned upon. But the woman who was working was looking the other way, and she couldn't see me. And I wrote down a couple thoughts. And one of the borderlines and one of her flying monkeys got a hold of the counselor and got her all fired up. And that counselor didn't have a clue that she was being directed by a borderline, and a flying monkey comes in and snatches my note-taking notebook and my pen away, and did it in a very controlling and shaming and aggressive fashion, which humiliated me in front of the other patients. And I was so powerless and traumatized, I left. But I went and found a quiet place, and I quietly wrote out what I thought happened. And I came to her after the next session, handed it to her, expecting her to address it. And she ignored it for a couple of days and didn't address it at all. She was just going to pretend like it didn't happen. And that's the thing, folks. What I've learned in this world is you have to be cunning. You cannot be overly trusting. I made photocopies, and I got those photocopies to the head of the unit and to the owner of the treatment center, and they read them, and they said, you know what, Mark? We believe you. We believe that this is what happened. We've investigated it. We believe you. Then I was referred to Miles Adcock, who owns this wonderful treatment center OnSite. And he said, we believe you. We hear you. How can we make restitution? He contacted this therapist and offered her an adjustment to her attitude. Then they got her on the phone, and she humbly and tearfully apologized to me. So a powerless patient who is in there because you're acting nuts has the therapist who has all the power in tears, fearful that she was going to get turned into the licensing board, which would have happened if she wouldn't have humbly apologized. So I'm not bragging on my power. I'm bragging on OnSite that they were able to sort through it and hear me. So they heard me. They made restitution. There was a financial issue about going to another treatment opportunity later that month that there was sort of in question, and they gave that to me. They made it right. When you have a voice with a healthy organization, they hear you and they make it right and they apologize and you feel empowered. So they make people be accountable. So I know that I'm probably going to get a lot of comments about organizations, whether it be the court system, churches, hospitals, companies, where you two have been abused. And I want to receive those, and don't make them too long. Don't make them, 8 pages long. Try to keep it to 2 paragraphs. But this is true. In our struggles, we're not just dealing with narcissists. There are genuinely unhealthy organizations who, either through ignorance, this bridge to recovery, they just didn't have a clue. And they used their power in a way that was just so wrong, and it hurt the narcissist and it damaged the hell out of me. But they were good people trying to do their best. This is complicated stuff. Very few people really understand narcissism and their games and their faces. So my goal is to educate as many people and as many organizations as possible. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is to have healthy organizations where you can register a complaint, be heard, have access to the management, get restitution and apologies, and be empowered. So I really hurt for you if you were deeply hurt by an abusive, hurtful organization. I've been there. That was the worst part of my pain, was the treatment center that I had just been to a few months before, and who I trusted to have them misperceive the truth, get manipulated by the narcissist, become a bunch of flying monkeys, and jump on board with the aggressive and hurtful mind fucking that went on. Not a good thing, but the beautiful thing about recovery is we can get better. We can get stronger. I'm 9 months in, and I'm starting to thrive, and I'm starting to feel joy. I had a ball playing basketball the other day, and your recovery is bigger than the narcissist. Your recovery is bigger than the whole flock of flying monkeys. Your recovery is bigger than all of your symptoms. As you do the work and as you learn what's going on and as you do things to heal your body, you're going to thrive. So thank you for watching today. If you haven't joined our YouTube channel, Family Tree Counseling, please do that, and you can be notified when we make these videos. And visit our website, familytreecounseling.com. Got a really good book on abandonment that would help people who suffer from narcissistic abuse syndrome. I'm working on the book on narcissistic abuse syndrome, but I've mainly been making videos on the subject. Thank you for watching, folks. I care about you guys. God bless.